So let's talk about why the 4th generation Toyota Tacoma is so much better. And I mean better than, I think, every generation Toyota Tacoma that's out there. Now, I've had 2 of the generations. Unfortunately, I've never had the first. So I'm going with what other people have told me about having all of the generations of the Tacoma and why the 4th generation is so much better. Number 1, the acceleration. There is no comparison between the acceleration, the power of the 4th generation Tacoma as compared to the 3rd or even the 2nd. When you hit the accelerator, the gas pedal, it goes. I love that. No longer do we have throttle lag, at least not much of it. I don't know that there's any vehicle really, unless you're driving something electric, that doesn't have any throttle lag. But Toyota has improved the new generation Tacoma so much that it is hardly noticeable in the truck. I love the way that it responds when you hit the gas. A huge improvement over what we had in the Gen 3. Number 2, the ride quality. We all know that Toyota changed the suspension in the rear end, right? They completely redid it, and they redid it for the good. I mean, it still feels like a truck, don't get me wrong. When I jump into my car, I notice the difference. The car is really smooth. It's like driving around in a Cadillac or something. But the new Tacoma is by far better than what I had before. I remember going over railroad tracks and things, which I do quite frequently in my routes when I drive around and do mobile videos. And I always dreaded going over those tracks when I was actually in the middle of a video, because I knew the truck was going to do a little front to rear bounce, right? You know what I'm talking about. The bed kind of articulates a little bit. The rear end's a little bit bouncy. It just didn't absorb those tracks as well as the new truck does. Again, don't get me wrong, it's still a truck. You're still going to feel it, but it's so much better, so much smoother than what we had before. Number 3, the gauge cluster and the tech. You know, one of the things that always dated the Tacoma for me as compared to, I think, every other vehicle that was out there of the same model year was the gauge cluster. It had that old looking feel to it, right? No longer. Now everything is digital. And you have so many options. I still haven't figured out all of the options that that gauge cluster offers, right? You can scroll through all kinds of different things depending on what you want to see. I love the new look of it. It also changes depending on what mode you're in. You can change the coloring of it. You can swap dials and gauges and things. I love the way that it works. The infotainment system. You know, one of the biggest complaints that I used to hear frequently about the 3rd gen was the infotainment system. The way that the screen looked, how the clarity was lacking, and it certainly was. The 4th gen is so much better, much clearer. Now when I back up, I can see what's behind me without having a little bit of fuzziness or a little bit of, I don't know, cloudiness to it. It was always kind of strange to see that, especially when you're used to other vehicles and they've always been so clear. I don't know what took Toyota so long to get there, but they finally did with the 4th gen Tacoma. It's awesome. And I'm just talking about the smaller screen. When you go to that bigger, more massive screen, it's even better, which, by the way, I will be doing, I think, pretty soon on the channel. Number 4, the stance of the truck. We have to go out here and look at this a little bit. Now, full disclosure, I do have a level lift on the front of my truck, so it may not be completely fair, I guess, to look at the stance of this truck in the front anyway, as compared to what you would get with stock. But nonetheless, the truck still sits higher than it did with the previous generations, and that just gives it more of a rugged, kind of sporty look, I think. I love what they've done with the truck. I have to say, though, that I do sympathize with people that are maybe a little more vertically challenged. You might need steps to get into this truck because it is high enough, I think, that if you're not maybe at least 5'8", 5'9", something like that, you might have a little bit of a problem getting up and down, getting in and out. Not a problem. Toyota still offers a number of different side steps, running boards, things like that that you can put on the truck. And by the way, they still do have the Predator style side steps. Arguably, and in my opinion, the best looking ones that you can get out there. I think to describe them, they're the ones that kind of have individual steps for the front and the rear, as opposed to that full board. I will tell you though, that in my experience, that full board is really the most useful because it gives you the widest stance with the most real estate to step onto if you're getting in and out of the truck. But I always go for the sporty look. Of course, on my truck, I don't have any steps, as you can see. I did come with them, I did take them off, and I will do that on the next truck as well. I kind of go with, I guess, looks over function when it comes to that for me. It's kind of marginal with the height lifted the way that it is in the front. I don't really need them, but I do have to give that extra oomph when I step up into the truck. Now, I am 5'9.5". I think if you're probably 6 foot or taller, they're just going to be in your way. You might need them for others, but definitely not yourself. Number 5, the transmission. I can't tell you how many times I've had comments on the channel from third generation owners talking about how horrible the transmission was or is on the third generation Tacoma. And the biggest complaint was it never could find its gear. It was always gear hunting, right? More prevalent if you live in an area where you have hills or maybe in the mountains, things like that. Honestly, it's not something I ever really noticed because I live in a valley. It's flat here. I'm never really going up and down hills and things. The other big complaint about it was it would never stay in the higher gears, right? Always wanted to ride around in 4th or 5th gear. I don't even notice any shifting in this new 8-speed transmission. I think it is the perfect pairing with that 4-cylinder turbo engine. I think they did an excellent job with it, and it fits really, really well. Number 6, the looks are still there, if not even better. Now, I was always a big fan of the looks of the 3rd gen, actually every gen Tacoma if I'm being honest, but this one, it just looks a little meatier in the front, a little more aggressive, particularly if you do the lift and put a little bit of tire poke on the wheels and tires. I think it looks really good. Like I say, arguably better than the 3rd gen, but it is an awesome looking truck. I think Toyota did a great job in maintaining the lineage, the look of the Tacoma, so that they kept enough of the 3rd gen style to it so that it's more of an advancement versus a complete departure from what it used to look like, I should say. Finally and lastly, what many people had wanted and complained about were the brakes. It now has disc brakes on all 4 corners. I can't tell you how many times I heard people complain and want and ask why Toyota didn't put disc brakes in all 4 corners. It has it now. All of the people that didn't like that should be very happy. Anyway, from my experience, this version, the 4th gen Tacoma, is the best Toyota Tacoma yet. Anybody that says it isn't probably has never driven one, or maybe they can't afford to get into one. And that's fine. Never spend more money than you're comfortable paying, right? And there's nothing wrong with the 3rd gen. The 4th gen is just better. Leave a comment. Let me know if you agree, particularly if you've at least driven a 4th gen. I'd be curious to know why you don't like it, if indeed you don't. Thanks for watching. Stay safe out there. Bye.